what does it mean for a company that is so embedded in the technological, in the virtual realm, to go into product design? How do you even set up a design department within such a company? And if you do that, how do you make products that make it possible for people to interact with in a more intuitive way than we have been interacting with products so far? Well, there's no better placed person to explain you everything about that than Ivory Ross. She is the Vice President for Hardware Design at Google, and I'm very proud to have her here on stage. A warm applause, please.
Thank you. Thank you. So a little bit of context about me. My dad was an industrial designer. He worked for the famous designer Raymond Loewy in the 50s. So I grew up in a house where he taught me how to see things beyond what they appear to be. And I then went on to be an artist craftsman, working with my hands. My work is in my 20s, my work got into museums all around the world. And I'm very grateful for that, because I think there's no substitute for working with your hands. There's something about the connection between having an idea and manifesting it. I then went on to work in fashion, in product design, and then for the last 5 years, I've been at Google. I was originally brought into Google to work on the second edition of Google Glass, a product many of you have probably heard of. After they launched it, they brought me in for the second edition, at which point we decided it was not ready for real people. I think it'll be about 10 years from when it was invented that we'll stand back and say it was 10 years ahead of its time. But the second edition went into industry and is doing very well, and I think we will realize that in the future. But I'm here to talk about the fact that this company that has been around for 21 years and has become known as one of the most helpful companies around the world, and our mission and impact of organizing the world's information has grown exponentially. And the company developed some of the most helpful and amazing applications ever created. And today it's pretty incredible that 9 of these products each have over 1 billion active users. But the task was given to myself and my team about 5 years ago, actually about 4 years ago, to develop physical product, which I thought I had done everything in my career, but really to come into a company that was that large and that didn't have a discipline of design, and to work with the team to create what was that design language going to be that would bring together hardware and software and AI. So the great news was, being late to the game, we were able to stand back and look at other brands and say, we're not this, who are we? And electronics really has been looking very much alike in today's market, at least the big companies. And that really drove us to want to figure out where to position ourselves on this scale that would give us a more unique and brand-appropriate position. So we organized a cross-functional debate to explore all the possibilities, and we looked at all the manifestos that Google had written over the years, and what were the words that were used, and what were consumers saying about us. And we ended up with these 3 words: human, optimistic, and daring. So we've always been human, as in authentic, approachable, and humble. And we've been optimistic in terms of bright colors, curious, and we strive to be daring and confident and adventurous. So then the goal was to take those words and figure out, how do we create a design language from those words? And products that would be clearly differentiated from some of the competitors you see here. And so this is where we ended up, which I think you'll agree is very different and feels a little googly. So this was our first cohesive hardware product line that was shaped by those design principles that established our presence in 2016 in hardware. a group of products that you can feel belong together, including phones, laptops, home, and wearables. And we know that everyone has their personal preferences when it comes to color, so we wanted to make sure that there was something for most everyone. So next I want to share with you a little bit about how we delivered on that design language through these principles. So first, the word human, which really implies, I think, approachable, honest, and humble. And so for us, that meant pure geometry, along with some materials that were unique to consumer electronics, but designed to fit into your home. We really wanted to be the anti-black box, which is definitely the path of least resistance. And so we started doing these forms that were more natural. When you hold them in your hand, they would feel like a river stone or a pebble. Also hiding the technology and the interface until you would need to communicate functionally. So none of the lights go on until you actually need to interface with these products. And optimistic was the second pillar. And so we wanted to add the surprise of pop colors. A lot of people at Google said, Ivy, why do you need to do a color lab? We have our colors. They're our Google logo colors. And that really does not make sense for products for the home, makes sense for a logo. But yet we wanted to translate some of the optimism into these pops of color in the right places. And third, daring, was really about challenging the status quo and designing, for example, a VR headset covered in fabric instead of plastic, and to reimagine colors, materials, and finishes on things like a smartphone. And every moment was deeply considered through all the details. So our efforts are being recognized by the industry with about over 110 design awards since our launch in 2016. And we created some design principles in the process, such as using more than one material in each of these products so that people had a tactile feel. I really feel like the antidote to screens, flat screens, is causing us to crave this sensorial nature of texture and different surfaces. So I wanted to make sure that our products absolutely contained all of this. And that graphic break that we used with two surfaces, we also used as a visual clue for our users' interface on most of our products. And with statements such as these, we knew that our design philosophy was transmitting. I love when they say things like the tech giant has a shot of tactility and emotion, warmer and more human than ever before. We were very happy about that. Though I must say, this piece of press is my all-time favorite. And consumers are noticing too, which of course is the most important audience for us to make happy. And within only 2 years from launching, Google received the honor of being named the Design Company of the Year in 2018 by Fast Company magazine. So we started working on our next set of launch products, creating new form factors for the home, a display, and we wanted to be mindful knowing that most people take care in decorating their homes. We asked ourselves, how far on the scale could we position ourselves through design? We considered various screen sizes, orientations, speaker volumes, searching for the right form factor. And we found lifting and floating the display and receding the speaker gave the product a visual lightness. And the 7-inch display and speaker size were chosen to maximize placement in a number of different areas around the home. Last year, we added a controller for Stadia, Google's cloud gaming service that creates a seamless path across all devices for playing games. And as soon as the product shipped this year, it got named one of the best innovations of 2020, and it's something that the entire family can enjoy. And then there's Pixel 4, a phone that has evolved quite a bit since the original Pixel design in 2016. It's been completely redesigned from top to bottom with some incredible new features. But the playful color button remains. The design continues to focus on unique colors, materials, and surface treatments. Our material and tactile approach continues with the introduction last year of the Pixelbook Go. This laptop has a ribbed surface on the bottom for easy grip ability and a fun feel. And our newest Nest Wi-Fi reveals a pop color when turning the product on and glows with happiness when communicating. Our Pixel earbuds were designed to fit flush to the ear profile and comes in many fun colors that look good in a variety of skin tones. So by the end of the year, last year, we looked like this. Oh, we need sound.
We play it louder, louder, bigger, better, prouder. Ramp up the volume, turning up the power. What? What? Right? What?
Hey Google, turn it up.
Louder, louder. I feel good, I feel good. Oh yeah, 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 yeah. I feel nice, I feel nice. Oh yeah, 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 yeah. I feel ready, I feel ready. Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, that's right, yeah, that's right.
So we look like this by the end of the year. And we always want to make sure that the products look good together as a family, but we never do something wrong on an individual product basis to force this. But we find if we follow our design principles, it happens naturally. And of course, we want to continue to own color, because color has always been in Google's DNA. We want to take a colorful approach and surprise and delight the user in appropriate places. So we choose colors for the context the product will be seen or used in. We stay on top of the current worldwide color trends. And our last filter is making sure that what we choose feels brand appropriate. We gather information from a variety of trend services and exhibits and look at other influential companies from outside the consumer electronics category as well. Then we take all of that data and create our own thoughts as to how a sociological mood might affect a trend. Then we create color and material mood boards, bringing these 3D boards to life with 3D pieces we find sometimes, and then puts that back into a 2D palette that we create. But perhaps most importantly, we iterate and experiment to find the appropriate shade of color. And often, we find ourselves creating the future before it happens. Our coral color was named Color of the Year soon after we launched it. And we in design get very excited when we hear things like our Wasabi color game controller sales are outpacing Clearly White and Just Black. I think color is emotional, and we love offering people choices. And of course, we love receiving public love letters, such as this one. So what I've just shared with you is a little bit about our design process, but I would love to share with you what's underneath all of that, which I believe is where the real secret sauce is. It's the people. My team is from all over the world, coming with expertise in areas of design, UX, engineering, color and materials, having worked on a vast array of product categories, fashion, furniture, electronics. And in my role, I think of myself as the orchestra conductor. My job is to know each of the individual instruments really well through deep listening, what their skills and passion and talent is, for us to all align on what's the musical score or symphony that we're going to play. And then my job is to hold the vision and make sure that we're all moving in that same direction. I feel that we're, all the same, yet everyone is different. So the magic happens when people's gifts are amplified in harmony with one another. So I make sure to create different events, getting the team together, most of the time in nature. People are asked to leave all their devices on the bus, and it's great because when we're together out in nature, people always say that time seems to slow down. And I think, nature is the ultimate sensory material. It has color, texture, sound, smell, and space all around you. On this organic farm last year that I took the team out for a day, you had the choice to become a beekeeper for the day or pick flowers among 145 acres and then learn how to arrange them, or pick tomatoes and enjoyed them together. I believe that an important element of creating together is trust and connection, and we need to create other ways for that to happen outside of our day-to-day work environments. I believe if you focus on yourself or your singular goals, you may knowingly succeed, but if you forget yourself and truly connect with others to focus on an audacious outcome, that's when unimaginable success happens. Another important element as a team is that we use both data and our intuition. So, on the surface, these two sources of information or intelligence seem contradictory. Data being facts and statistics collected together for reference or analysis, and intuition, the ability to understand something immediately without the need for conscious reasoning. Of the two, data has become the dominant or default driver of decisions. And on the surface, it seems to be safe and the sure path. However, while valuable, data has become so big that it can dominate our thinking and feeling, which puts our intuition at risk, resulting in analysis paralysis. All the while, we actually have another form of intelligence that's readily available, our intuition. And what we need to remember is that intuition is our first instinct and actually another form of data. Some scientists are saying now that intuition may be the highest form of intelligence because your intuition often knows what your conscious mind does not. They say that only 10% of everything we take in goes into our frontal lobe, our conscious mind. The other 90% goes into our unconscious. So when we have a gut instinct, it's actually coming from more data because it's that 90% that's been gathered. And our intuition is information that we've been born with and we've amassed over our lifetime in both active and passive ways. More importantly, its power lies in our brain's ability to access this information and connect the dots, assembling and reassembling over and over again. I recently saw, I think, a PBS program that explained that the most creative people actually are born with more gray matter in their brains, so that as they take in information, there's more room to make these new connections, to create new, like almost new neural pathways. So this idea that we, and I believe that, creativity is taking in information and putting it together in new ways. And the amazing thing about intuition is that it can be thought of as a muscle. Every time you use it and trust it, it becomes stronger. And that brings me to design thinking versus design feeling. So human-centered design is not about designing for what people think or say they want. It's about designing for what people need. Designing for what people need is why we cannot rely solely on interviews and survey data from design research. That type of information only scratches the surface because we can only get out of people what they're able to articulate based on what they already know, as opposed to what we as designers might be able to imagine as combined with what our intuition tells us. This is why when designing for a future that does not yet exist, we need to gain a deeper understanding of people, how they think and feel, to truly provide what they might need from technology in the next 3 to 5 years. Which brings me to design feeling. Beyond solving a problem or enabling a task, what is truly important is how a product leaves us feeling. I love this quote from Maya Angelou that says, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." So to express how the Google Design Studio felt about the hardware we were designing, in 2018 we exhibited at the world's most important design show in Milan for the first time, and we collaborated with Lee Edelkoort, a Dutch friend of Trend Union, to create an exhibit called Software, but we spelled software S-O-F-T-W-E-A-R. And it showed our vision of how man and machine can live together in the home, softening those lines between work and leisure, hardware and software. We shared our vision on how human-centered products could be harmonized into the environment seamlessly. You know, I think when technology first came out, it was big black boxes that said, "Look, I'm here," and now that we're living with it, it's about how do we quietly assimilate it into our environment and have it be there when we need it. We actually had commissioned Kiki van Eyck, another Dutch designer, to make tapestries using our hardware and some of the materials to create a unique set of tapestries that inviting people to visually touch. The press and public really understood what we were trying to say with this first exhibition. And then last year, building on our thinking from Milan, we held another show at Tokyo's, one of their prestigious venues that Tando Ando designed. And it was called Comma, because a pause, a thought, these are the moments in what define life, comma. And it was an installation curated with Lee as well that explored how technology could be incorporated into these living spaces with craft objects, antiques, etc. And here it was compositions between artistic works and contemporary design pieces, wall hangings created by another Dutch interior architecture firm, Ina Mat, which has fragments of antique linens in the great Japanese tradition of quilting and mending. And these abstract works focused on the shapes that were reflected in the Google products and hardware principles. So like the exhibition's intent, I'll take you through just a few slides and I'll pause from talking and see if you could even find the Google products within these still lifes. So, last year, given our interest in neuroaesthetics, we went back to Milan to explore how design and space impacts our biology. It was called A Space for Being, and we made sure that even the dynamic logo gave some insight as to what was to come. We created a collaboration between my design team, Mudo, a Danish furniture company, the Arts and Mind Lab at Johns Hopkins Medical University, and an architect named Suchi Reddy to bring this concept to life. Sound?
The way this project is unusual is that we are actually pursuing a principle. I really believe that form follows feeling, and feeling is really what space and architecture are about. Space actually affects people.
Design matters. It's why we spend the time making the decisions we do. Those things that we as designers intuit, neuroscience is now proving have an effect. Google created an exhibition that is showing design's impact on our biology.
The way that I explain neuroaesthetics, it's really simple. It's basically how your brain changes on the arts. When you have a heightened aesthetic experience, like a piece of music, a sunrise, things that really elevate your everyday experiences, they change you. They change your biology, they change your mood, they change your emotion.
I called Suchi Reddy and I said, taking the neuroaesthetic principles, could you create 3 different rooms that would evoke different responses?
The goal is to see how people resonate with space and to really find out whether what they think they resonate with is what their body is actually resonating with.
We respond to the aesthetics of our environments, whether we realize it or not. The band can demonstrate with data from the sensors that actually is happening. Heart activity, respiratory activity, skin temperature, skin conductance. We figure out from the data which room is the one that feels the calmest or the most at ease for people.
Where does your physiology feel most peaceful? I think it's what people are searching for. The space between the notes, the place where they can come and just be.
The interiors where we work and where we live have a deep impact on our well-being. We always known it and believed in it, but we haven't been able to quantify it and improve it. You enter a space and it's like, I like it, but why?
This is about data used as a mirror back to yourself. Data is just a bunch of numbers, and we wanted to make it artistic in its expression.
It can be really hard to put an aesthetic experience into words. Suddenly, by combining science and technology, we get a new language.
We've selected room 2 as the room that you were the most calm in.
Maybe a watercolor can tell more than 1,000 words.
Technology has the ability to help you know yourself better. The problems of the future are only going to become more complicated. Solutions have to happen in this collaboration of technology, the arts, and science.
So let me explain what we did. Guests entered the space and were presented with a fabric band that we made. And by the way, this band is not for sale. I don't want a world where we have to walk around with a band to tell us how we're feeling. I'll explain why we did this at the end. But the band that the visitors wore throughout the experience captured their biological responses through a series of sensors on the inside of the material. An algorithm that we worked on was validated by Johns Hopkins. And we then had each visitor spend 5 minutes in each of the 3 distinct living room, dining rooms. We wanted to make sure that we used the same room over and over again. And there was no talking, no picture taking, just being in these spaces. Each of the rooms were heavily curated with neuroaesthetic principles. Aesthetics are those elements that affect the senses, and the Arts and Mind Lab at Johns Hopkins is researching how those aesthetics contribute to our well-being. So we use these principles to create 3 very different environments. The 10 folks at a time sat quietly just to experience, and we invited them to touch the artwork, just be in the space. In between each of the rooms, we walked people through a palate cleanser, like sherbet between different courses and dinner, that was acoustical foam designed to kind of cleanse the senses. We had scents customized for each of the rooms and music customized, which played, of course, on Google Home speakers. And then after completing walking through these or being in these 3 rooms silently, guests ended up at their own personal station where the band was removed and placed on a tray with a pebble-like weight to make sure that the data was offloading. Oops, sorry, hang on. I might have to press this again. Yeah, okay. So each guest got to see this little film that educated them on exactly, the 3 different kind of room environments they were walking through. It talked about the 3 different kinds of measurements we were taking. And then it explained that we were looking for which room was your body the most at ease, or you could say the least stressed. And we translated, which I'll talk about in a minute, into different watercolor circles, the first room versus the second versus the third, using all of that data. And then at the end, served you up, showed you where you might have had a moment of excitement because you discovered something in that room. And then we showed you that we were deleting all of your data, of course. So each guest actually walked away with a printout of their unique circle, which represented the room at which their body was most at ease. And they also included a printout of all the aesthetic elements that were in that particular room. And we were thrilled to become one of the most talked about exhibits at the fair, making everyone's top 10 list. And the lines were an hour and a half to 3 hours long, which I felt horrible about. But in thinking about the experience's success, we heard, which was ironic, how much people just really appreciated being asked to sit in a room at a fair like that and just be. I mean, I couldn't believe how they said, first of all, we appreciate, thank you for, I said, wait a minute, you waited online for 3 hours to be told, you know, we can give ourselves that permission at any moment in time. But anyway, they remarked, you know, we did this to show people that, first of all, you have agency over what you surround yourself with, and that everything you surround yourself with does make a difference. The other thing we heard is that people really loved the artistic expression of the data, and this was intentional, as I feel as though people take in information differently depending on the aesthetics of that information. So it was great to feel that all the hard work my team had done experimenting to land on that aesthetic had paid off. You know, what we did is we took the multiple data points that were processed from the sensors and combined them into this metric of what at ease might look like, and then created a ring that symbolized the visitor's graphic experience in the room. And this expression of the metric continued to draw upon, you know, human methods of image making, in this case, painterly blending in an emotional execution to visualize each person's physiological response. And we continued to be consistent throughout in the use of hand-drawn information. And last but not least, people remarked on how every detail was thought out and mattered in affecting the positive nature of their experience. So what we really wanted to say here, you know, I think those of us who are designers and artists, I mean, we know that everything matters, but now neuroscience is able to show that. And what I was hoping, which came true, is that for half the people, what their cognitive mind, they walk through the 3 rooms and they had an idea that they loved room number 2. And that was because they liked room number 2. When they looked at their physiology, their body actually perhaps felt more at ease or less stressed in room number 1. And so this idea that our body is always feeling was something that was what we wanted to show people, that we are so in tune to what our mind thinks that we forget that our body is feeling all the time, and that sometimes we're aware of it and sometimes we're not. And the fact that the markers would change from room to room just on a physiological level was showing that our body was feeling differently in each of these 3 rooms. So this was an amazing collaboration between very talented people, and I'm grateful for everyone's hard work. And you know, we do practice what we preach. So about 2 years ago, a building on Google campus was gutted. And my boss said, Ivy, you know, work closely with the architects to ensure that the way your team wants to work, because Google design was really not a discipline. We've had user experience, but physical design was not a discipline that, it was new to the company. So I'm so grateful that I got to work with the team and the architects and design a space that really supported us and picked a lot of the furniture, colors, and materials. And we wanted the building to represent what we believe in, which is both analog and digital. I don't think it's either or. I think it's both and. And I remember when we asked for a design library, and at first someone said, wait a minute, we're the company that digitized the world's information. And I said, no, but designers need to hold and touch and feel books. And so it was great. We ended up having a 3-story design library that goes, across, up and down, up the staircase. And we have a material library where one sees a rotating exhibit of things that have been found all over the world that inspire us for one reason or another that the designers bring. And we catalog the inspiring materials we find, both physically as well as digitally, on our new a material web app. And this catalogs both processes and materials. And we even have a tune-up shop for humans. There's a company called Tune Studio that modernized a deeply studied, pre-existing vibrational technology that's been used in both science and medicine for the last 30 years. And they developed an instrument and neurofrequency sets that allow the body to operate at its highest potential that includes creativity. So the designers have an app where they can book a 15-minute session at any point in time and choosing a specific mode such as creativity, energy, or relaxation. I've studied sound and vibration for 30 years, and I have done a lot of experiments showing how music and sound can do amazing things. So I'd like to end with a favorite quote of mine. Design creates culture, culture shapes values, and values determine the future. So let's all start by designing how we want the future to both look and feel. Thank you.
Please stay on stage for a
Stay
couple
on
minutes.
stage?
Yes,
Okay.
if that's okay for you. For
Okay.
a couple of questions.
Okay.
That was an amazing project, the Milan project.
Yeah, that's where actually Frame magazine, where I first
Yes.
learned about you. Yeah, because one of your writers came through it, and it was a very emotional experience for her.
Yes, exactly. So we wrote about that. Why did you do that project even?
I'd gotten a call from Johns Hopkins Medical University asking me, they were starting this Arts and Mind Lab, and because of my background, I started as an artist, and I became a designer, and I've always been passionate around the fact that I think at the end of the day, art will save our lives, because we crave, I think it's the thing that makes us feel alive, and we've forgotten it a little bit. And so they asked me to be, what do they call it, an advisor, or on this council. They were looking for someone in design, someone in film, in each of the disciplines to help guide them. Because at first, it was ironic. I thought, oh my God, I don't need neuroscience to prove what I know intuitively. But my whole life has been know your audience and get the right information through. And so then I realized, no, Ivy, it's a really good thing that neuroscience can prove what you know intuitively. So we only go to Milan not to sell our product, but to keep showing up as a thought leader in the design arena. And so I think it was learning what Johns Hopkins was doing and knowing that we've been doing some things in wearables. And at Google, we have access to all of these brilliant people. And I thought, well, I wonder if I could collaborate and put this experience together for people just to give them really a moment, a reflection of proving the things you're feeling all the time, and all these things matter. And it was crazy because all the journalists, everyone was like, are you going to make that band? Are you going to manufacture that band? I said, absolutely not. We did it just for this exercise as a reflection back to people. I don't want a world where people have to have a sensor to tell them how they're feeling. I want people to understand that every color, texture, sound, smell in our environment aids in the way we feel and our well-being. And I think in a time like now where we have countries and nations that are depressed and flatlining, we have control over our environment. And that's why I think what this is about, what you're doing here is so important, is because we designers have the ability to put people in these spaces that make them feel differently. That was a long answer.
That's a very good answer, but let me challenge you.
Okay.
Can you imagine reversing the process? So can you imagine to create a wearable that enables people to control space. So that enables people, because we've been talking on this stage some hours ago about adaptive space,
Yep.
about space that responds to human beings and to
Yes.
circumstances. So can you imagine reversing the process, enabling people to control space?
Oh, I think someday it will happen where certain devices might even know if you've had a hard day at work. And so when you come home, it will adjust the lighting and the music to put you back in balance. So absolutely. I think, sensor technology could be used to do that today. And I think that will happen.
Let's go a step further. I think you should produce that bracelet. I'm here on this stage for an entire day. I forget myself. I forget to drink. I forget to take a seat. So I feel bad at the end of the day. What if a wearable would send me some signals, hey guy, have a glass of water, or please sit down on a chair, to help me feel better, to improve my health?
Yeah, I mean, wearables are doing the watch. I think the Apple Watch tells you to stand up. There are certain Fitbit. I mean, so I think we are definitely, I am all about data that gives you information that's usable and that's helpful is great. So I think we are absolutely moving in that way in terms of giving people data that they can act on for their benefit.
But can overrule at all times.
Can overrule?
The data, the advice by data.
Oh, I totally think it's your choice. And I mean, some people don't need to be reminded to take a glass of water, other people do. So yes, I think it's totally your choice, and I think some people are going to love coming home and having their home adjusted to what they need to counterbalance what they've had, and other people say, no, I want to flick the lights myself. I mean, I think, just like I believe it's not digital or analog, it's both and. I think we're in this world where we have to offer choices. Yeah.
Let's open up to the audience. Are there any questions? One over there.
Thank you very much, Ivy. I thought it was amazing. I'm happy I stuck around for it. I have a question about the aesthetic that you introduced. The first time I saw this aesthetic of these kind of pastel colors and the reintroduction almost of analog materials and devices was in the movie Her, which I just looked up from 2013, so 7 years ago. Is that a coincidence, or was that also an inspiration for you?
Total inspiration. It's so interesting you said that. When I was interviewed for Google, you are so right on. During my interview process, they said to me, why are you interested in technology? You've never been in technology before. And I said, because I saw the movie Her, and I think that was a brilliant, that showed where a piece of technology, to your point, I don't know if you've seen the movie, but can make humans know themselves better. Because for those who don't know, he lived with kind of a woman in his ear that was almost his friend or psychiatrist through life, and you heard her giving him feedback that made him very self-aware. But throughout that, in fact, I think the phone was built into an old cigarette case that they opened up, and so it was a very and I know intentional moves on their part, even the color palette in that movie, because I later I bring in people to inspire my team, because I really think as designers, as I said earlier, we take information in and it's about making new connections. So the man who did he came to speak to the team about 2 years after I started at the company, because it was ironic, but all of the designers, we all have the same feeling about the world we want to move to, which is a feeling of using technology where it's helpful, but making sure that we don't lose, not to make it out of cold steel, make sure we do it in a warm and tactile way. And so he came to give a talk about the whole thinking behind that movie Her. In fact, if you go back and look at it, even their color palette of their clothing was all earth tones. So it was the first thing that it really stuck in my mind unconsciously around this contrast between and that you could live with both, and that they had embedded it in very familiar objects, and that also is the first clue to me that actually technology can reflect back to us and be helpful.
Mm-hmm. More questions?
Hi. I was amazed by the color and all the shapes, which are very marshmallow spirit. Don't you think that for the human being, it's also important to have some stress, in a positive stress, something stronger? It's like when we like to drink something strong. You think it could be interesting to alternate and not only be in this marshmallow softing thing, you know?
Yeah, no, I think the home products tend to have very soft shapes, but you know, the phones are very graphic. In fact, the latest phone has a very strong black band around a white phone, so they're very geometric and strong. So are the laptops. I think in home, and we always, you know, I'm just showing a selection. I've over-amped it in the presentation, but you know, everything is always offered in black, everything is always offered in white, and then the colors as well. But no, I think you have to have both. So and actually, some of the home products, the screens are more strong and the speakers are soft. So we're very conscious of that. I agree with you. I think it's, like I believe in everything, it's sometimes the tension of the opposites, or I'm a both-and person. But part of it was also, we really looked at people's home environments and looked at where we could be different than some of the other offerings that were being offered. But we, you know, color-wise, we look at color trends. And we go from, I mean, we've only been around for 4 years, but from softer to now some stronger colors. So I think we always want to kind of surprise people with our color palette. But no, I hear what you're saying, and we do have some of that balance.
A question over there.
Hi.
Hi.
I just had a quick question about how, obviously, speakers now, like a Google speaker or a Google Home speaker, is something different than what a speaker used to be. It's something that connects to things in a particular way, in a different way than they used to, in ways that are kind of mind-boggling.
Yeah, we never spoke to speakers before.
No, exactly. So I'm just wondering if you ever, when you're designing the physical form of it, whether you ever think about how to express that in some way, because it is a different object than what they used to be. And I'm just wondering if that's something that's ever thought about in the design process and included in that.
No, that's an interesting question. I have to be honest with you. We're hiding the interface. When you start to talk to a speaker, you know, 3 dots appear, white dots that show that you're in conversation with it. So we do change, because you do have to let people know. We're also very conscious of letting people know when the microphone is on versus not, you know, which you can control. But I know what you're asking, which is actually a good question, is these look like speakers. You know, we intentionally used acoustical fabric to send that signal. And I'll be honest, we hadn't thought about, should we do something that looked not like speakers. I tend to think it's like what we were talking about with her, that if you're going to do something very unusual, you need to give people something familiar. So it's grounded in something familiar with, if you're going to do something a little bit different. At least that was our position. But you could have taken it the other way and said, it's not your normal speaker. Although these speakers do play music and they do normal things.
Yeah, so it is a speaker, but it
is a speaker, well. And I think that's why we made it just look like a speaker. So, because many people can use it to play music like we did in the rooms, no one was talking to it. But then when you do talk to it, all of a sudden the interface arrives, and so you're seeing that it's a different kind of speaker. Yeah. But I mean, those are all the right questions to ask, right? Those are the questions of today.
Thank you.
One last question.
Hi, thank you so much.
Welcome.
I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about the methodology within the design team for iterating and using data for aesthetic decisions at Google.
Well, I think we use both. I mean, data is information in the system. It's one data point, no pun intended. So, but we balance that. So sometimes we'll show products to people to get their opinion in a focus group on color, let's say, which colors they like. But that's one form of data. And the other form is intuition of feeling what's coming next. And so it's about my role as the vice president of design is to, ultimately I'm accountable, so is to weigh the intuition with the data and make the call. I don't think I could work in a place where every decision was data-driven, nor would I want to be in a place where everything is just intuitive. So I think it's finding that balance. So the designers and I are constantly, like in some of those, what you didn't see is there's a color studio, a material studio, and everyone puts objects that they've picked up from all over the world that they're feeling is what we're moving toward. And so we look at that, and we look at the consumer data and try and draw inferences using both, not either or, both.
Thank you very much. Ivy Ross.
Thank
you.
you.